Well, delighted to get a few minutes with Samay, who is an energy analyst at Filsinger Energy Partners. Samay, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Viraj. Thank you, Viraj. Nice to talk to you again.
Let's start with a quick introduction. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yes, so hi, I'm Samay Shah, and I've been working at Filsinger Energy Partners, as Viraj mentioned, for the past year and 3 months right now. And my story is a bit of a long story, so I'll just try to keep it as short as possible. I'm initially from Mumbai, and I moved here for my undergraduate. I moved to the US for my undergraduate, where I studied at Purdue University for where I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering for the first 4 years. And after graduating, I kind of pivoted into the kitchen appliances industry, where I actually moved to Miami, and I was working for a kitchen appliances company for about 2 years before I decided that I wanted to kind of switch out of that and kind of change my career path. And I've always been interested in renewable energy, which I picked up during my time at Purdue. And I wanted to move into that industry for a long time. So to do that, I actually thought a master's would be a really nice way to change into my career path. And that's what brought me at Cornell, which is where I did my master's in environmental engineering for about 1 year. And after which, this is where I ended up at Filsinger Energy Partners right after. So that's a little quick professional journey of mine.
Absolutely. When did you start searching for full-time job opportunities after your master's program, or even during your master's program?
Yes, so I think I started looking as early as possible. I feel like I had two tries to to look for the job search, especially when graduating from Purdue. I feel like I learned a lot of lessons that I have probably might have done wrong when I was doing it at Purdue. So I realized that time is really of the essence when I'm starting my job search, and starting it as early as possible was really important. So just because my course was a 1 year course, I actually started it right as soon as I came to Cornell. So maybe within a week or 2 weeks of coming to Cornell, I had begun my job search, basically.
Got it. And when exactly did you join Cornell? Like, what was the year and the month?
Yes. So I should have mentioned that earlier. I actually started in September of 2019, and it was a 1 year program. So I graduated by June of 2020 as well.
Yeah. Got it. So in August and September of 2019, when you started your master's program, that's when you started searching for full-time job opportunities, because your course was a 1 year course. So you wanted to make sure that you have enough time to search for a full-time opportunity.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. That's exactly what I did. As soon as the first week rolled about, we also had a couple of initial job search seminars that our college arranged for us, which is a really nice thing to have, just because it helps everyone get into the job search mindset. And because my master's was not a thesis master's, it was more of a professional non-thesis master's. There was a lot of focus on job search, and all the students around me were also beginning to look for jobs as well. So it really helped to have a competitive atmosphere where everybody was looking for jobs as early as possible.
Got it.
Yeah.
How did you initially approach your job search?
Okay. Yeah. So I think initially I'd say that, of course, like starting early was key, but figuring out how you would approach your job search was very important. And that I think I needed to talk to my career advisor at Cornell. And she was super helpful. And I advise anybody else who's also starting to look for job search to approach their career services at their particular university, because they have so much experience in just how other people have found their job. They've been taking feedback, talking to other people, and that really helps build up their network and at least they have a really rich history of how other people have found jobs. And I think that's what I approached them. And I think after doing my own research, I feel like it was a three-way approach. And I think it's funny to think about it, but I think of it like a three-pronged approach, like an in-person approach, a remote approach, and a sort of a hybrid approach. And I can dive into each of those three and what it means. But yeah.
Got it. Got it. So you talked to academic advisors, and then you kind of narrowed it down to three approaches that you mentioned. Can you just briefly explain the three approaches that you took for job search?
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. And I think let's start with the in-person thing. And I know it feels like an office situation where it's like an in-person in the office, a remote, and then a hybrid back to the office. So I think I like to think of it that way, just because let's start with the in-person approach. The in-person approach was all the career fairs that we had at the university and maybe other universities. Mm-hmm. They were attending these company events and companies that showed up on the college campus and having networking events. Yes. So I think those three were the bulk of what I mean when I talk about in-person approach. Especially, I'd like to emphasize the career fair. Career fairs are not to be taken lightly, just because I feel like a lot of the interviews I got through, a lot of my interviews that I got through, and a lot of the connections I made at career fairs were really essential, just because there are so many different positions and so many different companies that were out there that literally there was something for everyone at that career fair. So taking that seriously and starting early for the career fair is super important, just because if you know what kind of companies are coming to the career fair, you can do some research on them. You can see what kind of positions they're applying for, who's actually going to come to the career fair, just because usually alumni tend to come to the career fair. So it's much easier to talk to them and much easier to build a rapport with with these alumni. And especially in my case, there were Cornell alumni that were coming. So it was easy to talk to them that way. And it's a more formal yet informal approach, which really helps out when you're trying to make connections and trying to get these first round interviews. So that was a little bit about my in-person approach for job search. But the remote ones, I mean, that is a more familiar one. That's the one I talk about when you refer to applying to companies online and doing your research and everything online. So that is a different approach altogether. It's not the same as the career fair. And I found that to be, I found that I had to be very strategic with how I applied to companies, just because I don't think, and at least from the research I did, that I don't think applying to as many companies as you can is a really good approach. I feel like you have to be strategic. You have to target the companies that you want to, and you have to really go slow about it and personalize some of those resumes and cover letters that you work on to be good with the job search. So that's a bit of my remote aspect of the job search. And finally, there is the hybrid job approach, which I mean, and I think the hybrid approach is a really, really new approach. And that is what I talk about networking a lot, and networking is really essential for any job search. And I think that was what I mean when I talk about a hybrid approach, just because it's also you do your research online, you find new people to talk to online. So suppose you're interested in a consulting company or in a big tech company, you have to go in there and find people that you know, or at least make connections with people at the company, just so you can find out what kind of roles that are available and what are they looking for in the roles. And to get to that, you have to make connections. And to make connections, you kind of really, you're going deep and trying to figure out what it is at the company that you're looking for, and making these connections, having those calls with people is a really interesting and a good way to also get your foot in the door. So yeah, those are my three different approaches: an in-person career fair approach, a high remote approach, which is applying online, and a hybrid approach, which is networking and connecting with new people. Yeah.
Amazing. Looking back now, would you have changed the approach you took for searching for jobs?
I think I would not. I feel like I did a lot of it. I would, of course, change the way I approached the remote part of the job search, just because I do say right now that I was strategic, but let's be honest, I was a little wavered in the way I kind of approached my job search. I was all over the place, and I was applying online, I was applying here, I was applying there. I had no clear goal in mind, but I feel like I've been a lot more strategic, at least targeted these maybe 10 or 20 companies and really gone after it big time when I was applying online. So I think the remote aspect of the job search, I would have really changed and been more strategic about it. So yeah, definitely. Thanks for making me look back at my job search. So,
what did you do to get the interviews from the companies you applied for?
Okay. Yes. I believe I think one of my most successful ways of getting interviews is through the career fairs. So
Yeah.
of course, like they were really essential. I just to like maximize your chances of interviews, you need not always look at your own career fair. So suppose your university has a career fair. Of course, that is the best way to like meet people and like apply for like make the connection and then go ahead and apply for the jobs and interview right there. But I would say that don't keep it limited to just your university. If you think there is a university close by which is having another career fair, or you think there is like companies coming close by to other career fairs, definitely those are also like good techniques to have. They recruiters actually appreciate when you have people from other universities that are actually rolling into career fairs, into like other company career fairs. It shows like the amount that you have, the extra effort that you have put in to go into like these new career fairs. So I think that is a very interesting approach. And I think that actually worked out for me. It's a funny thing because I did get a good bunch of interviews from my own Cornell career fairs, and Cornell career fairs were really nice in that they had structured it by different types of industries, and I was able to go approach companies from those industries as well. And it's not just that. I actually attended a couple career fairs that were outside, and I attended one of those from Colombia, and that was actually super useful because that allowed me to get a lot of these environmental jobs that I was looking for, just because Colombia had an environmental specific career fair, which I think was really nice just because it's a very big niche. And I found a lot of companies there that I really wanted to either work for. So yeah, I'd say that is one way to get your foot in the door. So
phenomenal.
that's from that aspect of it. I mean, if I can quickly go into like the remote aspect of it, I feel like to do that, you must like, and at least this is definitely my opinion itself, but personalizing resumes and personalizing cover letters is kind of important to like get the first round of interviews. And the reason I say this is because if there is a job description, say for a consulting firm, you're looking for you're looking for like an analyst role, for example, at like this consulting firm, and you want your resume and your cover letter to be tailored to the job description that it has. So that is really important, just because currently, if you look at it, there are a lot of these job search platforms that help you build and tailor your resume just so you can get your foot in the door. So I feel like it's a mixture of like really being strategic about it and reaching out to do as many career fairs as possible.
Nice. Looking back now, would you have done something different to get the interviews from the companies you applied for?
Yes, absolutely. I feel like the networking aspect of which I did not touch on, I feel like I would have definitely done more of the networking, just because I did hear from a lot of people in the industry. Of course, I did graduate from Purdue a couple years back. So I did have a lot of friends out in the industry that were already working. So they were able to give me a unique perspective on how they got their jobs and how the current job search works at their company, for example. So I realized that networking is important, and focusing on that and focusing on getting these referrals at these companies is a really interesting and really good way to get interviews. So I think I would focus a lot more on that, and the number of people it could be just a friend of yours who might have been working, who might have graduated early, who might be working at one of these companies that you really want to work for. So they can really help you get your foot in the door with a referral.
Absolutely. How did you prepare for the interviews that you got?
Oh yeah, okay. So preparing for the interviews, I feel like it's a more practice makes perfect approach. I was a really awkward person, a socially awkward person when I was approaching interviews initially. So I feel like practice really makes perfect. So the more interviews you do, the better you get, and the better you get, the more chances you get of actually landing clearing interviews and landing your first job. So I think it's all about not worrying about interviews. It's you do all the preparation you can, but to maintain a little bit of authenticity, you have to be yourself. So you can do all the prep work you can the night before, and that is super important because some of those questions you have to know about. Some of those questions that recruiters ask. There are some ways that there are some questions that at least most of the recruiters tend to ask. So I think those ones you need to be prepared for. But there are always like curveballs that recruiters can throw at you. There are these questions which they want to know about what you are like, what you as a person are like, what your personality is. So you have to show, you have to be authentic in the way you approach your interview. So I say prepare for all those for all those basic questions that might come. But at the end of the day, the more you practice and the more you feel like it's a conversation, the more you can open up to the recruiter and the more the recruiter likes you. It's all about building a rapport with the recruiter, especially if I talk about like the initial behavioral interviews. The recruiter is just trying to see if you're a good person, if you'll be a good fit for the company culture. And if you really show your true self, I think that is a super helpful way of preparing for interviews.
Nice. Looking back now, would you have done something different to prepare for the interviews that you got?
I would definitely have practiced a lot more. I feel like an interesting way is there are so many kinds of interviews now. You look at these behavioral interviews, which are just basic talks with recruiters, which you can just keep practicing and just be yourself. And that's a good way to improve. But I think like other kinds of interviews, there are these technical interviews for tech companies. There are like case study interviews for consulting companies. I feel like I could have done much better by utilizing career services and utilizing a lot of my other friends who were also looking for consulting interviews. And this is something I picked up from the MBA school, actually, that I really should have done myself when I was looking for jobs, is practicing for case study interviews with each other. So if I have another friend who was also looking for a consulting interview, for example, we can do case study interviews together, or just like have a case study session where I do a case study interview of him, he does a case study interview of me, and we just get better and we're helping each other. And I think that's a really good thing that I was not able to do. And I think I would have done if I was able to go back in time and change the way I did my prepare for interviews.
Got it. Pivoting towards some company specific questions, how did you come across your specific role of energy analyst at your company, Filsinger Energy Partners?
Yes. So again, it goes back to the career fair that I was talking about. I feel like I found them through a career fair at Columbia University when I had gone out there. So I tend to every time I go to a career fair, I tend to do research on all the companies that are coming out there. So most career fairs tend to give out a list maybe weeks in advance, sometimes months in advance, of all the companies that are coming out. So in my case, I think Columbia had given us a list a couple of weeks in advance, and I took a look at it, and I shortlisted maybe 5 or 10 companies that I was actually going to target, and I was actually going out to talk to. So to be company specific, I actually reached out to a lot of the people from the company, and at least maybe a recruiter, maybe an engineer from the company, and I had actually built a rapport with them just before the career fair. So it really helps because once you build that rapport, once you go to the career fair, it feels more like a conversation rather than a formal hello, hi. You feel like, okay, yeah, it's like I already have spoken to you before. So it's just let's talk more on the company, the role, the position, and what kind of like candidates are you looking for. So that's exactly what I did when I was applying for Filsinger Energy Partners. I did talk to the recruiter beforehand, so it made it easier to have a conversation once you were out there at the career fair.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. How did you get the interview for this role?
I think that just follows up from what I said. I feel like building a rapport with them was important, and talking to them at the career fair was really essential, because that's how I realized what kind of candidate they wanted, what were the different kinds of like role responsibilities that the energy analyst role had. And looking at that, I already knew about the role just before, just because a lot of these companies list their roles right before the career fair. So I had done my research on how I personally would be a fit for that particular position. So I kind of pitched myself, or I'd say like an elevator pitch to the recruiter, and in terms of how I would be a good fit for the company. And I think that really worked out. And the good conversational tone was really echoed by the recruiter as well. So I feel like that is what got me into getting the first round of interview.
Got it. And did you get the interview at the career fair itself, or was it something that you got afterwards?
Yes, I got it right after. I'm blanking out on if I got it right at it or after, but I believe I did get it a day or two after coming back from the career fair. It was just a day or two that they take to kind of figure out their candidates and who they want to interview, and they shortlist their own candidates. So I believe I got it a day or two. I got a call a day or two after, just about a phone call interview as the first round.
Got it. Yeah. Got it. And what was the interview process like for this role?
Yes. So for this role, again, it's very different for other companies, but I'll just be specific about Filsinger Energy Partners. It was a 4-interview process, where the first one, I believe, was just a phone call to figure out who you are, tell me your background and what that is like.
Yes.
And sorry. So yeah, the second round was, again, I feel like talking to another analyst or another consultant at the company, where she spoke more about the role and she asked me what my background was. So it was, again, a very casual, very informal sort of a second round of interviews, where you're already talking to someone else at the company. So I feel like I could do a lot of the asking questions, just in terms of if I think I would be a good fit at the company. Just the analyst or the consultant was working there for a couple years, and she had a good idea of how it works. So I feel like I could be informal with her, just because she was also looking for jobs maybe a year or two before. So very easy to connect with her. And I could also ask questions about like the position, just because she was more familiar with the position too. So that was the second round of interviews. And the third and the fourth rounds were the more formal rounds, where I was actually quizzed and I was actually asked about how my experiences and how my education linked to the exact role. So in my case, my role was an energy analyst role, and it was a lot more detailed in terms of the questions that were asked to me. And I had to tie how my education, my experiences, and my previous work experience really tied into how that would be a fit into my current role, into the role that they were looking for. So the last 2 rounds were a lot more formal. And I think after the 4 rounds, I went through each of those rounds. And at the end of the 4 rounds, I got a call from the HR of the company that I was accepted. I was being offered a full-time position.
Got it. And that kind of brings us to the next question. So how long after your last interview round did you get the full-time offer?
Oh, that was about maybe 2 days or so.
2 days.
I think I got the response in about 2 days. I think they mentioned that they took a couple of days to figure out who they wanted to offer the full-time position to. So yeah, I did get a call 1 or 2 days after, right after.
Any last piece of advice for any international student who might be seeking a full-time opportunity in the US?
Yes, absolutely. And I really appreciate you, Viraj, for like holding these podcasts, because it really helps for people coming out in the universities right now from other countries, maybe from India, and they're looking for jobs. And it is a tough job market out there. So I feel like if I had to give like any last minute tips, I would again reiterate what I said earlier on. Just be more strategic. I'd say like really start early and talk to people. I think talking is something that is one thing I'd say is very underrated. The more people you talk to, like career services, people at career fairs, you can talk to people like networking people through maybe LinkedIn and services like those are really good place to meet people. Be active, like try to like build your brand, if you will. Just be out there more, and that helps you get noticed more. And once you get noticed more, you can get more interviews, and having more interviews gets you more practice in clearing interviews. So it like goes one step to the other. And if you have to go from like step 1 to step 9, which is maybe like getting your job finally, is practice makes perfect. So if you start early, you'll have more time to practice. And if you have more time to practice, you'll have more time to make your way through. So I'd say really start early and make sure it's not just one avenue that you're exploring. Like you could be applying online, just don't do that. Do a little bit of everything, but be strategic in what you're doing. Just make sure you have a strategy about the way you're going about it. And I think that would be the best piece of advice that I think I could leave for anyone who's about to graduate and about to get into the job market.
Got it. Samay, it was wonderful to have you here. Thank you for sharing your perspectives.